Welcome back everyone. As most of you guys know, the iPhone 12 Pro has just came out. It's Apple's brand new flagship, and the iPhone 8 Plus was a phone that Apple released alongside, I guess, a bigger flagship, which was the iPhone 10, but in a way this was still a flagship of 2017. So this phone, I think at its release was $749 or something like that. The iPhone 12 Pro costs $1,000, but the iPhone 8 Plus does not cost that price anymore. This thing you can pick up in a lot of places for around $300 for the base model. The iPhone 12 Pro costs, I said, $1,000. Who knows when this thing is going to depreciate to this value, probably in a couple years, but let's go and see how both of them compare. Now, side by side, of course, if you want to pick either of these ones up, I always forget to say this, links are down in the description below. You can get them from Amazon and help support the channel at the same time. Now, like I said, side by side, you can definitely see that the iPhone 8 Plus is a far bigger phone. It has a far bigger imprint. If I even stack up the iPhone 8 Plus on top of it, you can see that it's definitely a far bigger phone in each dimension. But you actually have a smaller display technically on the iPhone 8 Plus than on the 12 Pro. You have a 6.1-inch display on the 12 Pro, but a 5.5-inch display on the iPhone 8 Plus. And I think for the most part, the iPhone 8 Plus's panel was pretty good. I've been using this phone for a couple years now since it came out, and I've been saying since then and even now that this panel is pretty decent, you know? Now, it's not an OLED panel, it's an IPS panel, and it has a lot of bezel on it, and this design is pretty outdated. But the fact that people are still, Apple's still pushing out the iPhone SE2s and people are still buying this type of design phone, at least in a smaller footprint, it still speaks mountains of, what people really care about. Maybe they don't really care about how the phone looks like, they just care about how it performs and the price tag more so. And with an iPhone 8 Plus, I think this display, for the most part, for a majority of people, is still really good. Now, the iPhone 12 Pro, on the other hand, does have the better display because it's a better phone and it's more expensive and it's the newest one. So it's not like anything that's crazy. The iPhone 12 Pro has a, like I said, 6.1-inch display, higher resolution than the iPhone 8 Plus. And for day-to-day tasks, you're going to have a really good time with the iPhone 12 Pro. That display is really nice, no home button, very little bezel around the whole entire display with the notch. And you do have the new flat sides on the iPhone 12 Pro, which looks extremely nice. I think the iPhone 8 Plus's design is still pretty good for the most part, but the 12 Pro, by having those flat sides, really makes me really like it for some reason. Obviously, it's not for some reason, it's a really cool reason, and it makes the bezel around the whole entire phone look that much thinner too. So definitely when it comes down to the front, I'll give the edge to the iPhone 12 Pro for sure. In terms of the thinness factor, they both are kind of around the same. The iPhone 8 Plus kind of feels a little bit thinner and kind of even looks a little bit thinner. The iPhone 12 Pro, you're always going to be feeling that thickest point, but I still feel like the iPhone 12 Pro feels pretty thin too, but I think the iPhone 8 Plus looks a little bit thinner. And on the back, you can see triple camera setup with a LiDAR sensor on the iPhone 12 Pro, dual camera setup on the iPhone 8 Plus. You have a cracked back on the iPhone 8 Plus, don't mind that, but the standard glass back on this device, which still feels really good. The iPhone 12 Pro has that frosted glass back, which also looks pretty good in my opinion. And I don't really think one way feels or looks way better, but I think the iPhone 12 Pro feels a little bit better. The frosted back on the 11 Pro felt way better than this one. This one kind of feels like in the middle of those two, but in terms of the outside, that really pretty much covers it up. Now, you have a couple of different things with the 12 Pro for sure. You're getting the MagSafe capability right here, which is really cool, and you're getting the better IP certification on the iPhone 12 Pro as well. So that's another big thing. The durability on the iPhone 12 Pro is better, and also the 64 gig base model on the iPhone 8 Plus is now a little bit higher. You're getting twice that amount of storage at 128 gigs on the iPhone 12 Pro. So that's a really cool option. So in terms of the outside and I guess some of the internals, that pretty much covers it up. Now in terms of the software standpoint, obviously the iPhone 12 Pro is going to outlast the iPhone 8 Plus, but still as of right now, they're both going to be getting the pretty similar software updates. I would say within like 2 or 3 years from now, that's when we're going to see the iPhone 8 Plus kind of, in the midst of like getting unsupported. But the iPhone 12 Pro still has a long way to go, and I think that's probably one of these biggest differences between the phones is definitely when it comes down to software support. They're both on iOS, they're both getting same-day updates and everything, but the iPhone 8 Plus will probably end its support sooner than the iPhone 12 Pro, so kind of keep that in mind. But in terms of software, that pretty much covers it up. I'll go ahead and do a little bit of a speed test between both these devices. Now, the iPhone 12 Pro has that Apple A14 Bionic chip with 6 gigabytes of RAM, where the iPhone 8 Plus has that Apple A11 Bionic chip with 3 gigabytes of RAM. So let's go and see which one is the faster one between both of these. Okay, let's go and clear out all the apps in the background, and the iPhone 8 Plus is fully cleared out. The iPhone 12 Pro, not so much. Okay, let's go and start loading things up. We can load up the app stores. 3, 2, 1. And even just opening things up seems so much smoother on the iPhone 12 Pro. I'll go ahead and increase the brightness a little bit on the iPhone 8 Plus. Scrolling through, About the same. I haven't really seen too many differences in terms of the scrolling speeds. I've been seeing most of the differences in terms of app opening and even the animations of some of them. Now I have a lot of these third-party apps that we can go and get into. Let's do Netflix, 3, 2, 1. And both of them were about the same. I wasn't expecting that. I thought there would be some differences. We can do Quizlet, 3, 2, 1. iPhone 12 Pro slightly faster, but the iPhone 8 Plus was still pretty fast. Dropbox, 3, 2, 1. And again, the iPhone 12 Pro a little bit ahead of the iPhone 8 Plus, but the 8 Plus was still holding it down. BOFA 3, 2, 1. And the iPhone 12 Pro faster. iPhone 8 Plus, definitely a bigger difference right here for sure. We can do Thank You, 3, 2, 1. And again, iPhone 12 Pro faster, but you guys can see, I mean, the iPhone 8 Plus is definitely still pretty fast. I wasn't expecting this one to be this fast every single time. We can do Snake versus Blocks, 3, 2, 1. And right there again, the iPhone 12 Pro faster, the iPhone 8 Plus a little bit behind it. Like, just based on these couple of apps that I opened, I'm pretty surprised about the iPhone 8 Plus for sure still. We can do Fruit Ninja, 3, 2, 1. And the iPhone 12 Pro is faster. iPhone 8 Plus just a little bit behind. The 8 Plus I think is doing better even than the iPhone 10, which I just tested. Let's go and do Paper IO 2, 3, 2, 1. And again, iPhone 12 Pro faster. iPhone 8 Plus just literally right behind it. Not a ginormous difference here at all. Gameplay wise, you guys can be able to tell a difference. I really don't think there's a crazy amount of difference in terms of gameplay. We can do Temple Run 2, 3, 2, 1. I am seeing the animations of just kind of opening the app still seem a little bit faster on the iPhone 12 Pro. The iPhone 8 Plus seems, this is kind of a bigger difference, I would say. Again, there was a little glitchiness going on with the iPhone 8 Plus right there when we first opened it, and the 12 Pro was able to get into the app faster. The iPhone 8 Plus behind it for sure. This is probably one of the more noticeable up differences, I would say. Gameplay wise, they're probably going to be around the same. That was a pretty big difference. Let's do Wheel Racing 3, 3, 2, 1. Hopefully they open up on both. Hopefully I don't have to download on either one of these. And the iPhone 12 Pro is faster, for sure. The iPhone 8 Plus a little bit behind it. I think this is probably the biggest asset for the 12 Pro. It may be for these bigger games, I would say. You're able to see definitely that the iPhone 12 Pro is way faster. The iPhone 8 Plus was noticeably behind it. And if you're trying to load up these games and play these games, I think you're probably going to have a better experience on something like an iPhone 12 Pro here. And this is a perfect example. Look how big of a difference that was. For those minor apps, they were pretty close. But for this one, for a bigger app, the iPhone 12 Pro was definitely far ahead of that app in my opinion. Let's go ahead and do Paper IO, which don't have stack, 3, 2, 1. 12 Pro is faster. I always just wait until something loads because I've been getting them wrong every single time. But yeah, the 12 Pro is definitely faster there. And we can go and end off with Crossy Road, which I don't have. But let me go and load up some apps. I mean, definitely what I can tell you is there are some minor differences between both. I don't think if you have an iPhone 8 Plus, just based on the performance aspect, that you should go and upgrade to the iPhone 12 Pro. I think the iPhone 12 Pro is a great performing device, but honestly, there weren't that many differences. I think I saw the major differences when it came down to the performance of opening the apps or whatever. But I think for a day-to-day use, you're probably not going to see too much of a difference, especially, I mean, when you go up to the bigger games, that's when I saw a majority of the major differences. The app opening speeds were a little bit different, but other than that, the iPhone 8 Plus was still pretty fast in my opinion. So the RAM management seems to be about the same too. So maybe the iPhone 12 Pro is better, but in terms of that, that pretty much covers it up. Let's go and hit on the cameras. Now, like I stated before, triple camera setup on the iPhone 12 Pro with that LiDAR sensor, 12 megapixel wide, 12 megapixel ultra wide, 12 megapixel telephoto lens. The iPhone 8 Plus has that two 12 megapixel lens setup, 12 megapixel wide, and then that 12 megapixel telephoto. Now, in terms of the UIs on both, you can see they're almost identically the same. And honestly, you're really not going to have those many feature differences between these two. I think maybe like the night mode on the iPhone 12 Pro is better or something like that. But the features are almost exactly the same. You can do 4K at 60 on the back camera. The front camera, on the other hand, is where the bigger differences are. You can do 4K at 60 on the iPhone 12 Pro. With the iPhone 8 Plus, you can only do 1080p. And that was okay back in 2017, but nowadays it's very important to have something higher than that. Now, the iPhone 8 Plus's camera I think is very, very good still for a 2017 phone that costs around $300. There's a lot of capability you have behind this lens. You can zoom in a ton into a photo. You don't have, an ultra wide sensor, which is something I actually prefer, but you still have that, portrait mode. You still have 4K at 60. You still have a lot of those different capabilities. So that's still a pretty big deal in my opinion. Again, not a deal breaker or anything, and it's definitely not as good as the iPhone 12 Pro's camera, but for a day-to-day task, and I'm definitely going to do a full camera comparison between these, I can definitely tell you the iPhone 8 Plus's camera, for the most part, is actually pretty decent. Now, the iPhone 12 Pro, on the other hand, still has a really, really good camera setup. I mean, this thing is, probably one of the best cameras out right now. It's probably behind the Galaxy S20s and the Note 20 Ultras, but this camera is really, really decent for the time being. You have a telephoto lens, ultra-wide sensor, and that LiDAR camera. Now, compared to other phones, I mean, like the Samsung Galaxy S20, you're getting more features there, but between these two, if we're just looking at these two exclusively, the iPhone 12 Pro definitely has a better back camera and a way better front camera. You can do 4K 60 on the front of this camera. The iPhone 8 Plus cannot do that. So definitely when it comes down to the cameras, the iPhone 12 Pro is the better one here. Now, ending it off with the battery life, the iPhone 12 Pro and the iPhone 8 Plus, I'll do a full battery comparison between these two at some point. But I'll probably tell you between both, the iPhone 12 Pro may actually have a little bit better battery life because of the bigger battery size, but I'll go ahead and test them further and let you guys know there. So to kind of sum up this video and say answer the question, should you pick up the iPhone 8 Plus or should you pick up the iPhone 12 Pro? I'll definitely tell you, if you have an iPhone 8 Plus and you've been able to keep it for this long, I would recommend keeping it, but going from an iPhone 8 Plus to the iPhone 12 Pro is a pretty big upgrade. This is the best iPhone you can buy right now, and it makes sense because it's one of the most expensive phones you can buy right now. For $1,000, you're getting a really good camera setup, better than the iPhone 8 Plus, a better screen, a better build quality kind of. You're getting the MagSafe capability, better IP certification, better performance for the most part, but after today's comparison, I can definitely say the iPhone 8 Plus still held its own down. There wasn't really like a groundbreaking difference between these two. And with a phone like an iPhone 8 Plus, you're still getting pretty good cameras, a really good build quality, pretty decent battery life. You just have a little bit of an outdated design on the front, but the iPhone 8 Plus still has a lot going for it too. And for a phone that costs around $300, like there's not a lot you can hate about it. It's a very good phone. It's a really good performing phone. And even though it came out in 2017, it doesn't really feel like a 2017 phone. It still feels pretty current. Of course, if the screen was, bezel-less and everything, this phone would still be holding up. I think the iPhone 8 Plus, if you currently have it, I would recommend keeping it, maybe even until a couple more months until the iPhone 12 Pros go down in value a little bit. But again, if you have all the money in the world and you would just currently had an iPhone 8 Plus for some reason, getting an iPhone 12 Pro would be a good choice. But I want to, say if you're an iPhone 8 Plus owner right now, I'd recommend keeping it. Like, I don't see a humongous difference between these two. Of course, the fronts are a little bit different, but I think the iPhone 12 Pro is the best iPhone right now, but the iPhone 8 Plus is a really, really good iPhone. If the iPhone 12 Pro was a 10 out of 10, I think the iPhone 8 Plus would probably be like a 8 out of 10, maybe like a 7.5, but that's still not a low of a score enough for me to go and upgrade in my opinion. But if it's a low score for you, then go for it. That really pretty much covers it up. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also, check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly, everything else. I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully, I'll catch you guys in the next video.